All right, let me know. Good? Okay. All right, hello grade 7s, and welcome back to our unit on interactions and ecosystems. Today we are going to be starting the last part of our unit about human impacts on the environment. So we're going to actually start our lesson off with an activity. So I'm going to show you guys 2 slides here with some photos on them, and you guys are going to have to make a judgment on the question I'm going to ask you guys in just a minute. So have a look at what you guys see here. You guys can see some refineries. This is from the oil sands in northern Alberta. This is actually just outside of Sherwood Park. You guys can see some smog.
What's the fish one? What's happening there?
Just pollution in the ocean and the fish swimming under all the pollution. So you
Pollution?
see, so you see there's like a basket there. You see some
There it is.
rope.
Okay, I can see it.
Yeah, so water pollution. Okay, nice. Oh, get out of there. And then second slide. So it looks a little bit better than the first slide, right? You guys see some green space. See some familiar landscapes with Orlac Park, maybe McKinney Ravine here in Edmonton, CN Tower from Calgary. Agriculture, big industry here in Alberta. All right. Which slide shows environmental perturbations? And what I mean by perturbations is disturbances. Which slide shows environmental perturbations as a result of human activity? Pick a slide. Give an example for your reasoning. So I want you guys, you don't have to write your example down. Just make a quick decision. Doesn't have to be anything long. Put your name that's on your sticky into the Venn diagram on the board. If you think either slide 1 with all the oil sands and the duck in the oil slick, or slide 2 with the agriculture and the cityscapes shows environmental perturbations, or if you think both, you can put it in the middle slot. Sure. Is there a back button here? There you go. And slide 1. All right, I'm going to give you guys a few more seconds to finish up.
Wow. You have such smart students.
All right. Okay, so looks like everyone kind of came to a general consensus here and thought that both slides showed environmental perturbations. So I'm just going to pick 2 random. All right. So Sarah, why did you put your sticky note in the middle? Why does slide 1 and slide 2 show environmental perturbations in your opinion?
I thought they both were showing some sort of disturbance to the land, even though the second one looks like it might be kind of nicer. There still is like a disruption happening amongst what would actually be normal.
All right, good point, good point. And now?
I agree with Sarah that, the second picture as you see here, we're still destroying the environmental habitat for animals with our farming or spraying pesticide or herbicide, and it's still a destruction of the environment in one shape or another.
Awesome. Well, all you guys are right. My grade 7s are incredibly smart and have incredible foresight. So I quickly want to address a misconception here. A lot of people think that environmental disturbances have to look something like this. Something ugly, something big, something catastrophic. Like, look at all this pollution in this river. That's pretty terrible. But when in reality, environmental perturbations can look something like this. We may think pest control is great. We may use it in agriculture to sustain our crops, but chemicals, like in your textbook in Science in Action 7, it mentions DDT. It could take control of one species, but potentially could have a very hazardous effect on another species. Or even a green space like this. Sure, we preserve some of the forest here in Edmonton, but people walk up and down this trail all the time. What about waste from their pets? Or if they litter with wrappers or other things, right? So humans leave an ecological footprint pretty much wherever they go. And no matter how green we try to be, sometimes humans still have an impact on their environment. Now, environmental environmental change can have many different forms. I'm going to introduce you guys to a concept called the planetary boundary model. So the planetary boundary model is developed by a scientist called Johann Rockström. And what he proposed is environmental change just doesn't have to look like air pollution. It just doesn't have to look like biodiversity loss. It can look like all of these things. So it can look like climate change, chemical pollution, atmospheric pollution, biodiversity loss, changes in land use, freshwater use, changes to chemical cycles, ozone depletion, and ozone acidification. So what's something about this diagram, this planetary boundary model, you guys notice right away that is just blaringly obvious? Just what's something you notice about it? Just it could be anything. Yeah.
The top of the earth, like, or sorry, never mind, I looked at it wrong.
Well, it's a circle, so
Yeah,
there's not really like
okay.
a start. Like, but what's something obvious about it? Like, what makes each section different?
There's different sizes of red zones.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly what I'm looking for, the red zones. So what Rockström interpreted this as is there's certain areas of the earth that need a little bit more attention than others. And he divided it up by climate change, biodiversity loss, and changes to chemical cycles. Now, before we move on, I want to take a quick moment to acknowledge this last one. Changes to chemical cycles, we're going to throw it back to the beginning of our unit in interactions and ecosystems. Do you guys remember what a chemical cycle is? Or if you don't know how to describe it, can you give an example of a chemical cycle? Yes.
Would that be something like the nitrogen cycle?
Exactly, like the nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle, carbon cycles. Yes.
Never mind, you said it, carbon cycle.
Okay, yeah, exactly. So there are changes to all those chemical cycles, biodiversity loss, and climate change. Now, can you guys give a link between any of these? Like, sorry, let me rephrase real quick. Can you guys think of any ways these three parts might be connected here? Do you think that all these three parts that are red could be interacting with each other? So, climate change, biodiversity loss, and changes to chemical cycles. Can anyone quickly think of a situation in their head where these three areas might be connected? Okay, yeah, humans cause them all, but how could climate change impact biodiversity loss or could impact changes in chemical cycles? Do you guys see any connections?
Global
Yes.
warming?
Okay, yeah, global warming. So let's actually just quickly take a look at the carbon cycle, right? You mentioned the carbon cycle earlier.
Yeah, I did.
All right, so let's take a quick moment to think about that. So carbon cycle, right, is a natural chemical cycle. But we see us overloading carbon into the atmosphere. Carbon is a greenhouse gas. And what a greenhouse gas does is it can trap heat in the atmosphere because its chemical composition, CO2, allows it to do so. So we notice when we overload the atmosphere with carbon, a change in our chemical cycle, we notice that there could be some connections to climate change. It acts as a blanket. It can make things warmer. And what happens to species who like the cold? Biodiversity loss. Polar bears, seals, belugas, their environment's warming up.
They're
What
not
if
so
they-
happy.
Exactly, they're not so happy, they can't survive warmer conditions. So that's just one way these three areas can be interconnected or could potentially influence each other. Let's take a closer look at biodiversity loss. So in your Science in Action 7 textbook, this is on page 69, you guys can look more into biodiversity loss. So biodiversity loss can take the form of three separate levels. We have a threatened level, which is species whose numbers are declining. This is an example taken from your textbook as the eastern Mississauga rattlesnake. We have endangered species that are in serious danger of becoming extinct, like the beluga whale. And extinct species, species that no longer exist anywhere on Earth. Now, extinction has happened over eons. You guys know the story of the dinosaurs. We don't see T-Rexes walking around here, they're extinct. Extinction is a part of natural cycles, but we're afraid that humans might be speeding up the cycle through processes like climate change and maybe habitat destruction. As we saw in the second slide, we saw farming, right? Destruction of forest ecosystems to make room for agricultural fields, right? So that's just an example we can connect from your textbook to the planetary boundary model I just showed you guys by Rockstrom. So application activity. You guys are going to work in pairs. Someone's going to have to work alone. And you guys have about 2 to 3 minutes. What I'm going to get you to do in your groups is, you guys work together. You guys are going to think of an example of a human activity in either Edmonton, Alberta, or Canada that affects the planetary boundary your group is assigned. So I gave you guys changes in chemical cycles, biodiversity loss, and climate change. Be ready with one example of how it's being affected in either an Edmonton, Alberta, or Canada level, and propose a solution as to how we could be better stewards of our environment as a result. So you guys are going to get 2 minutes, right? Go. 2 to 3 minutes, sorry. And when you're done, just flip over your sheet so I know you guys are done. You're ready to answer. I might speed you guys up just because I need to get to one last slide of my presentation. Are you guys good?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Alright. So I'm going to get you guys to quickly say your problem and your solution. Just real quick round table. Let's do it. You guys.
So changing chemical cycles, farming's a problem because the fertilizers, the sprays, they affect like the phosphorus cycle, the nitrogen cycle.
Good example,
the
yeah.
cycle inside the environment. Use manure instead. Use like natural fertilizers of sorts or plant enhancers.
Nice one. What do you guys?
Okay, so we were talking about biodiversity loss, and we were just talking about, like you called it urban sprawl.
Mm-hmm.
As the city grows, that land's got to come from somewhere. And
Right.
I don't know what the solution is. It's not so easy, right?
Yeah, I mean, cities.
Stop
Yeah.
having
Tell them
babies.
this.
Stop having
We
babies.
should adopt a one-child policy.
So I mean, cities like they try to include green spaces, which are great. They
we were talking
preserve
about
some
that. So like in
environment.
the new housing
Yeah.
developments, they've got like little wetland ponds.
Yeah,
things.
exactly. So
it's something, but
it's something,
Yeah.
but it might require some more critical thinking. But unfortunately, we have some time constraints, so we can get back to that. And lastly, climate change.
Okay, so mine was climate change, and the problem we're having now is like there's too many vehicles out, maybe because of a lot of people moving to Edmonton. So maybe I let the government know to just incorporate more public transport, or even allow more space to park your car at like the transit centers.
Okay, yeah. So they can accommodate more people, right? Because there's about 37 million people in Canada. That's a lot of space and resources we got to use, right? So let's quickly take a look at an alternative perspective here. So we looked at the planetary boundary model, which was proposed by a scientist of what we like to call Western scientific beliefs. Let's take a look at Indigenous perspectives, because the Indigenous peoples of Canada, or Canada's FNMI community, has lots of deep tradition and values which are tied into the land. We've been inhabiting this land for hundreds and thousands of years. So it's important we acknowledge that there are differences in opinions when it comes to human impacts in the ecosystem, much like anything else on Earth. So they share holistic views on how nature affects people and how people affect nature, past, present, and future. And what I mean by holistic views is that it's a big picture idea. It shows how humans are connected to the land and how the land is connected to humans. And now, because of time, I'm going to leave you guys off with a little story here from the Anishinaabe peoples of Canada. So it's called The Prophecy of Seven Fires. So basically the story goes, there are 7 prophets. And the 7th prophet is a young, wise prophet. He has a gleaming fire in his eyes, but he comes with a rather foreboding prophecy. He says he envisions the land dying, the water, the air, the animals all becoming poisoned. So, he says this because he sees a white nation, as they call it, affecting the ways and traditions of the people of the red, black, and yellow nations. So this white nation, also called light-skinned nation, will come and have a choice. The light-skinned nation that comes to the land will have a choice to either pursue a path of brotherhood and sisterhood, where they listen to their internal voice and they respect one another and in turn respect the land. And the land will keep providing and thriving. Or the light-skinned people have a second choice. But that second choice is driven by ego, wealth, greed, domination. If we do not share the land, if we consume and consume and consume, we won't have enough land left. We'll leave the land in despair and destruction. And one day that will come back to devastate the people of the white nation. It will come back by having the land be poisoned. The white people or the white nation cannot use the land anymore. How do you guys see that story fitting into what you learned today? Think about it. I'm going to leave you guys off there. I'll leave you guys off with a few reflection questions before I go. How does this story apply to today? Which path do you guys think we're on? Do you guys think that we could ever switch paths from the first path to the second path? Or the second path to the first path? And if so, how could we do that?